Thank you, Madam President. I rise today to talk on a subject that is of great importance to me and of great importance to employers, workers, consumers, and really everyone across this country. And that is the need for substantive reform of our country's federal environmental review and permitting process. Now, this is a subject I've talked about a lot. I've championed efforts to make sure that our environment and economy benefit from a functional federal environmental review and permitting process. And I am now and once again leading environmental review and permitting reform efforts through the Environment and Public Works Committee, and I'm working with my fellow Republican senator, who's the ranking member over on Energy and Natural Resources, Senator Barrasso from Wyoming, and we're working across the aisle with our counterparts. Permitting reform is much more than just text in a legislative text. It's more than just updates to laws that have been on the books for years, or about replacing counterproductive measures implemented by the Biden administration. It is an essential element in giving our nation what we need to be successful in the future. Without permitting reform, American energy will be continued to be stalled, jeopardizing our security here at home, as well as our allies abroad. Without permitting reform, communities across America will struggle as they are denied access to the good-paying jobs that they need and are capable of doing. Without permitting reform, America will not build at all. The same country that mined the coal, that made the steel, and that built the democracy and led the way for industry across the world will be held back by endless review processes, continuous and continuing court challenges, and crippling regulations that limit our ability to be the world leader that we know we are. In my state of West Virginia, which is synonymous with energy generation, we have long seen the negative effects created by a permitting process that is designed to stall rather than to produce or create. There are multiple real-world examples of how our broken environmental review and permitting process is holding up my state of West Virginia's ability to move forward and is impacting multiple sectors important not only to the people of my state, but also to our national economy. In the transportation sector in West Virginia, there's Corridor H. Corridor H is a critically important highway that West Virginia needs to help commerce flow and to jumpstart the economy in the central part of our state and to encourage our growing tourism industry. In the manufacturing sector, there is Nucor Steel, an innovative, cutting-edge steel and steel products company that can't, as yet, build their plant as quickly as the Biden administration keeps creating new emissions guidelines. And then in the energy sector, there's the Mountain Valley Pipeline, a 304-mile-long natural gas pipeline that is on the brink of completion, over 90% completed, yet it is unable to deliver its needed contribution to American energy independence due to the regulatory burdens and endless legal challenges that have gone on longer than the actual construction of the pipeline itself. These are just 3 examples in the state of West Virginia. Think about the national impact created by outdated permitting processes, the damage inflicted on our communities and our economy, and the opportunities we're losing because of an administration that champions red tape, feeds frivolous lawsuits, and whose agencies celebrate delays that lead to the total abandonment of critical projects. It just doesn't make sense, quite simply. Even the renewable energy projects and manufacturing efforts central to the Biden administration's agencies are being held up in permitting purgatory. President Biden has long pledged that he will build our country back better. Well, newsflash, Mr. President, you can't build back better if you can't build at all. The fallout created by a broken environmental review and permitting process further strains our sputtering economy, drives up energy prices for consumers, negates good-paying jobs for hardworking Americans, and really jeopardizes our ability to build into the future. Now, as my constituents in West Virginia would say, well, what are you going to do about it? Well, From conversations we've already started in the EPW committee, I will soon be introducing legislation in tandem with my colleague, Senator Barrasso, that delivers on the environmental review and permitting process reform that our country needs. This legislation will benefit all projects: renewable, conventional, surface transportation, manufacturing, all of the above. This legislation will mandate enforceable timelines with clear time limits and predictable schedules for environmental review and consequences when agencies fail to reach these decisions in a timely fashion. This legislation will fashion guidelines that process and decide legal challenges to projects expeditiously instead of creating a sea of endless litigation. The legislation will actually amend the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, and NEPA, and fix the obstacles holding our country back from the prosperity we deserve while maintaining, of course, maintaining environmental protections. I will emphasize, as I have many times in the past, that any tangible, lasting environmental review and permitting solutions must be accomplished through regular order. Backroom deals will not cut it. In fact, they will only lead to confusion among the American public and buyer's remorse among the participants. We have forged the blueprint for bipartisan compromise through the EPW committee time and time again, and this process should be no different. I encourage my colleagues in both chambers, on both sides of the aisle, as well as President Biden, to heed the calls from communities across the country on the urgent need for environmental review and permitting reform, and join in our efforts to deliver the modifications that America's employers, workers, and consumers need. I look forward to the continued debate on environmental review and permitting reform, and while always maintaining our shared goal of moving America forward. And with that, I yield the floor and see my colleague, who's been very instrumental in all of this, and as we work together with our colleagues, Senator Barrasso.
Madam President.
Senator from Wyoming.
Thank you, Madam President. It's a joy and privilege to join my colleague from West Virginia, Senator Capito, on the floor today to talk about legislation that we'll be introducing tomorrow. It's about permitting, and I come to the floor to talk about ways to lower prices for American families and restore our country to energy dominance. And of course, the way to achieve this is by fixing our broken permitting process. There is a lot of work to be done. There is bipartisan support to do it. So she'll be introducing, along with me, our legislation tomorrow. And this legislation is going to streamline a very complicated permitting process. It's going to speed up American infrastructure, energy, as well as mining projects. Taken together, this legislation will address fatal flaws in today's federal permitting process. You know, the current system moves in very slow motion. Too often, as Senator Capito said, there is no motion at all. Things are stopped in their tracks. Today's process forces project developers to endure a maze of regulations, mountains of paperwork, expensive studies, and bureaucratic foot-dragging. It takes an average of 4.5 years now just to complete an environmental impact statement for one single project. In some cases, it can take a decade or more to get final approval for a project. And even if a project makes it through, the regulatory roadblocks to get a permit will inevitably be challenged in court. Project opponents are skilled at exploiting our broken permitting process to stop all progress. Litigation can drag on for years and cost millions and millions of dollars. In my home state of Wyoming, activists are suing to cancel hundreds of federal oil and gas permits. Now, these permits were issued after years of environmental reviews. They're frivolous, the lawsuits, but they're happening all across the country. The longer it takes to get a permit, the more a project costs. The more it costs, the more likely a developer will either pull the plug or just give up before even starting. The result of all of this is that energy prices go up. People feel the pain. Because when investments aren't made, jobs don't materialize, projects of national importance don't get built. And I'm talking about projects like oil and gas wells, pipelines, transmission lines, wind and solar farms, power plants, roads, tunnels, bridges, mines. To see what I mean, Madam President, take a look at this chart from The Economist. I call it cancel culture. It shows that for the past several years, more miles of interstate gas pipelines have been canceled than have been built. Let me repeat that. This shows past several years, more miles of interstate gas pipelines have been canceled than have been built. You know, we used to be able to build things in this country. Not anymore. It's not that we don't know how, it's that we're not being allowed. Shouldn't take longer to permit a project than to actually build it. In too many instances, it does. The American people inevitably lose when that happens. The permitting process must change so we can lower costs for families and unleash American energy. We can't keep today's broken process and expect to stay ahead of rivals like China. Taken together, the legislation that Senator Capito and I are introducing is going to streamline the permitting process while preserving environmental standards. This will put America back in the lead. Project developers need to expect a system that is predictable and delivers a timely answer. Our legislation will do that by sticking to 4 basic principles. First, real reform must benefit the entire country, not a narrow range of special interests. Our bills are technology and fuel neutral. By that we mean we don't put our thumb on the scale for politically favored technologies. This is going to help expedite projects from both conventional and alternative energy sources. Look, we need all the energy here in America. Second, our legislation includes enforceable timelines with specific time limits on environmental reviews. Third, we place time limits on legal challenges to prevent endless litigation intended solely to kill new energy projects. And finally, our legislation prevents the executive branch from hijacking the process to meet its own policy preferences. The energy bill that I'm going to introduce focuses on streamlining improvements to produce more American energy and more American mineral resources. It's going to lower costs for families. It's going to enhance America's energy security. It's going to reduce reliance on China, on Russia, and on other adversaries for energy as well as key minerals. A key aspect of my energy bill is to resume federal onshore and offshore oil and gas leases. Now, the Biden administration has tried from day one to block access to federal lands and waters, regardless of the law. We cannot allow any administration to deny, defy, and disregard the law. My bill also will speed up the production of critical minerals used in renewable and battery technologies. Our country is blessed with large mineral deposits, some in your home state, Madam President, my home state in Wyoming in particular. We have large reserves of coal, uranium, rare earths, and other minerals. Yet it often takes over 10 years in the United States to get a mining permit. Our competitors in China move much faster, as do our northern neighbors in Canada. Unlocking domestic mining means that we will no longer have to rely on China and Russia for critical minerals. Finally, my bill will ensure the affordability and reliability of our electric grid. We will have American energy that is affordable, that is reliable, and that is available. Now, the House recently passed the Lower Energy Costs Act. The Senate now has an opportunity to pass our own legislation. We can pass bipartisan legislation that unleashes American energy, boosts our international competitiveness, creates jobs, and lowers prices. This starts with today, fixing today's broken permitting process. Now, Democrats said last year that this reform is necessary. Senator Capito and I are bringing solutions to the table. Democrats are serious about fixing the broken process. Meaningful reform is possible. Thank you, Madam President, and I yield the floor.
Madam President.
Senator from Alaska.